Good morning, good afternoon, depending on which side of the coast you're on. Hi, everybody, Revaluate Success Group. We have Ryan and Jonathan joining us this morning. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us. Our topic today is what to do with a bad lead. We'll dig into that in just a moment, but I want to plug next week. We're going to have Ellen Shaikun with us. She's with Berkshire Hathaway's Home Services. And she's developed a new title, a new slogan for her marketing, which is the Forever Realtor. And she has done that in collaboration with our scores. And she'll be on to talk about her process, talk about everything that she's done to develop this new strategy. And so we're excited to have her. And I think you guys will get a lot of value out of that conversation. You can learn all the tips and tricks and all the different things that she's doing. So stay tuned for next week. Ellen will be here joining us. But we will jump right in to exactly what we're going to do today, which is what is a bad lead? And we're just going to start off kind of by defining and talking about what exactly is a bad lead. So who wants to kick us off here, guys?
I'll go first. Just because so this is something that comes up a lot of times when we're having conversations with people who are first getting started and trying to identify what database they should be monitoring. And they say, well, I got all these bad leads. I don't want to be monitoring all of those. And I always have to ask them to think about it for a second and think about, like, what would you historically have categorized as a bad lead versus like what really is a bad lead, right? Because people who are buying internet leads, they're buying basically 100 for every one that converts almost. And does that make the other 100 a bad lead, or is that something worth hanging on to? And so I've noticed a lot in the last couple of years, a kind of a shift, at least in the people that I speak with, from the old mindset of like just keeping your sphere and your past clients and people like that in your database to more of the concept of, okay, if there's a living, breathing human being on the other end of that form of communication, then they should be in your database because there's a finite number of living, breathing human beings in the world. And so if you have an opportunity to be able to connect with one, then it just comes down to timing and messaging. So what a bad lead is, really, if it's bad information, that's one thing. But if it's a person that didn't want to talk to you, or even if they told you never call me again, there's still opportunity there. It just comes down to timing and messaging, and we're going to try and help with the timing.
Jonathan, anything you'd like to add to that before we move on?
No, I agree completely. I mean, ultimately, they checked a bunch of boxes at the point where they were established by somebody to be a lead. And just because that one thing isn't there at this point, which is usually timing, right? Unless like specifically like funding fell through for a potential buyer or seller, or sort of those one-off situations. But usually, if it's something like timing, it becomes really easy just to put them sort of in another bucket that might not necessarily be lost leads, but just not right now, and so ultimately, I think if you approach it the right way, there are no bad leads. Sometimes it's like people in your life. Sometimes the timing's just not right.
Sure. I think we need to dig into this a little bit more. We want to talk about strategies and tips for this and how Revaluate can help with that. But I'm hearing a lot of maybe where are these leads coming from? I think might have a lot to do with this discussion. We talk a lot about farming leads and we talk a lot about sphere leads. So I think we might need to dig into that a little more before we can really dig into some strategy tips for how to engage these old or bad leads. Does that seem to be on target?
Yeah, I think kind of transitioning into that too. When it comes to what really is a bad lead, our system does a detox when we import a database to get rid of what we identify as an actual bad lead, which is Mickey Mouse or profanity or other industry people that aren't going to be opportunities for you. Outside of those, like I said, as long as it's accurate and gets to somebody in some way, then it's something that you would hold on to. And so whether those came from lead generation or referrals or a cold farming area, people move, people change emails, people change phone numbers. So you always need to be updating those lists so that you don't end up with bad information in them. But as long as the information is accurate, then the next step is identifying what to say to them at what time to get to where you need to get to, right? And so will be monitored the same way and identified as likelihood to move, but your messaging is going to match based on where they came from and what kind of level of interaction you've had with them before.
In terms of you want the information to be right. Over the last few weeks, we've talked about a few different things, but I think it's a good time to bring it back up. If you're looking for data that you have missing, we have a couple different tricks and strategies to do that. The first right off the bat is we can try to append emails, just so you guys know if anybody's missed that. If you have addresses or you have phone numbers and you want us to try to append the emails, reach out to us. We also have been doing some research into different companies that have different postcards with QR codes so that you can try to do mailers. And you can try to get the additional data and information from them. Right off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure that Corfact and HomeBot both do a different mailer. Do you guys know of any similar to that?
QR code mailers. I actually was just speaking with someone at LRE a couple weeks ago who worked at Addressable, and they are not only familiar with Revaluate data, but do have their own proprietary QR tracking code thing with their handwritten letters, which is pretty cool. And just to color in a little bit of additional information on the reside appending, we can go from email to name, address, phone number when available, or we can go from address to email with various degrees of matchability. But we need at least name and address or email to go one way or the other in order to help fill in those gaps for people.
So maybe we should then transition a little bit more into strategies and just specifically for those cold leads. So let's say you have a bunch of people in your CRM graveyard. You've been buying Zillow Flex leads and you have a whole bunch and you haven't really done anything with them. They're from the last, I don't know, let's say 4 or 5 years, and they're just sitting there in what we like to categorize as the CRM graveyard. What are some direct tips you would recommend for them to start off today to have some success with some of those old leads?
You want to kick it off, Jonathan, and I'll pick up wherever you leave off?
I think ultimately the first thing I always think of when I sort of think of, how do you maximize on any lead, and it's just making sure that you're doing something with it. Just having a batch of leads or having identified, the people that you're going to call is great, but if you're not doing anything with that lead source, it doesn't mean anything. And I know that seems very tongue-in-cheek, but first thing is honestly just get started. Make sure that you depending on your audience and sort of your messaging, are reaching out to them in a couple different ways, whether it's text messaging, whether it's actual cold calling using ISAs, if it's email blasts, postcards, physical mailers, knocking on a door, whatever it is, just making sure that also when you're reaching out to those leads, you have something to say. It's always nice to sort of just say, hey, here I am. But ultimately, you got to make sure that your messaging has something behind it, tied to an event in their specific area, or the person, if you know them specifically, depending on who you're reaching out to. But you just want to be very tactful and sort of making sure that you have something that's personable to them, but not like too personal. Because that's just weird.
It's funny. You reminded me in your Just Do Something. So a company that actually we both worked at previously, before you were there, when I was running the ISA department, we hit, kind of a high watermark as far as how our listings were going. We were bashing our head against the wall, trying to figure out how to improve listings across the company. And at that time, it had always been set the appointment, give it to the agent, and let them do their thing. And we said, well, what if we just followed up with them and saw, where things had gone? Just had our ISAs follow up with the appointments that they had set. And we took just our past appointment bucket and dumped it into the dialer and churned out so many appointments that week because they either, something came up or they had forgotten to call the person back, or just all the things we all deal with every day. But by adding an additional layer of action and kind of taking over on our side, where we could do something like a power dialer through the whole thing, just created so much opportunity from what was considered, lost opportunity. And it's the same exact thing we're talking about here, same industry and everything. But it's like, okay, those old leads, call them, email them, text them, whatever you do. Hopefully you took notes. If you talked to them the first time, to Jonathan's point, you can draw off of the past conversation. But let's say you never even got a hold of them. If you call them at the right time and say, hey, you'd inquired about a property back 6 months ago. I just wanted to see how your home buying journey has been. Are you still in the purchasing process? Are you still looking to sell a home? And just re-engage, because it saves them the effort of having to click a lead form and go through that whole process and get sold to somebody again when the opportunity is there and the timing is right.
I'd like to dig into, we get a lot of these as well. Now let's take a little bit of a pivot here. And what do you do with a bad lead when it's a bad lead because it's a bounced email?
Are we talking? So if it's a bounced email and it has a high Revaluate score, then you should be dumping that into a social media retargeting campaign, and or if you have a phone number, picking up the phone and calling them, and or hitting them in some other medium if the email's a bounce. Because the fact of the matter is, we don't check for deliverability. We're checking for data that's being tagged to a specific email address. And I personally have an old email address that the inbox is canceled on that is my login for just about everything I use in life. And so if you try to email me there, I'm not going to get it. But if you target me on Facebook, it's going to be in my feed every day. If you hit me on Instagram, it's going to be there every day. If you call me, my phone number hasn't changed. It's just my friend canceled the website that hosted the email, so it's gone. And you're right, we get asked this a lot. It's like, well, how, that's a bad email as flagged by my CRM. They're right, that maybe if you don't have any other way to get a hold of them, then don't waste your time monitoring them if email is the only way you do business. But that does not preclude them from being able to be monitored and scored. And if they do have a score, there's still opportunity there. You just got to figure out how to get a hold of them.
You kind of walked us right into our next question, which was, when do you recommend we actually remove them from being scored? And you kind of did touch on that a little bit. And that's going to be really
when they die.
When they die.
Or move out of the country. Or move to an area that you don't care about a referral in. I mean, again, if there's a living, breathing human being over there, there's an opportunity, because even if you're not going to get a listing, you can get a referral, you can get all sorts of different opportunities. You just got to think wide when it comes to the opportunity, but narrow when it comes to the people that you're going to spend time on.
And that will really lead us kind of into the conversation that we're going to have next week with Ellen. A lot of her story that I'm going to let her tell next week has to do with being your forever agent and not just being there at that moment when they're ready to buy their house. They're there for referrals. They're there for home repairs. She's there for everything, for the life of the person. And she's really developed this wonderful relationship with her customers based on their Revaluate score. So just because you call somebody today and they're not ready to move today doesn't mean you should rip them right out of your Revaluate database. Anything else you'd like to share, Jonathan?
Just to piggyback on that, I mean, when someone's talking about, when do I remove them, there's usually two times, and you sort of, that question crosses your mind, at least for me, and it's either I've tried too often and have gotten nothing, or they've given me an objection that I can't overcome, right? For me, it's usually as simple as one of those two things. And I think if you fall into the latter, though, where they've told you something, we're not looking at this for XYZ, or, I didn't get the job, so we're not going to, need to relocate anymore, or whatever it is. It's really important to just make sure that you're internalizing that and then putting it to some use to make sure that it plays into your next follow-up as well. So when you have an opportunity, when somebody tells you no for a reason, it's not a no, it's not right now. No's are never absolute no's unless, you're in a very, very niche situation. Most of the time, it's just not right now. So finding out as much as you can while you're getting that no, that initial perceived no, and then being able to internalize that for a future conversation is going to turn those upfront negatives into a lot of positivity down the road.
I think this was a welcomed conversation. I was hoping we'd have some feedback. If you guys are watching this post and you guys have any questions, or you want to take a little bit of a deeper dive in this, comment, send us your personal experiences, things you're finding as you're going through our scores and your databases. We'd love to comment and reply back to you guys. I know Jonathan has kind of been brought on to help grow the accounts. So I think this is a great conversation that he would love to have. He'd love to help you have success with your account and help you add additional value to that. Do you guys have anything you kind of want to end with or close out this conversation with?
No,
I,
we're good.
no, I look forward to the opportunity to having more of these types of discussions. And other than that, nope, nothing on my plate.
So I hope you guys have taken away kind of more defining of what a bad lead is, more understanding of what you can do, more tips and strategies to how to overcome those. If you guys have any questions or you guys want any topics for the future, let us know. We have some fun integration and marketing things that are going to be coming up. So stay tuned next month. We'll be talking about all the new integrations that are going to go live. And reminder, Ellen will be here next Tuesday. So we will see you guys there. Same time, same place. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for joining us, guys.